Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money with your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 381 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with Bobby Owsinski. I got to tell you folks, I was researching for my last episode, which was 380, on do-it-yourself sound boosts. And I'm probably going to have to scrap that episode after this guy gets done with me because he is one of the best in the world on sound and audio engineering and all that stuff. And I ran across an hour and 50-minute video of Bobby doing the Nimbus School of Recording and Media in Vancouver. And I'm sitting there thinking, like we all do, oh my God, an hour and 50 minutes? I didn't know who he was at the time. And I'll tell you what, folks, I was mesmerized. I almost had to pee myself because I didn't want to pause the video to go to the bathroom in the middle of it. It was just mesmerizing. So, and when you see somebody that's been there and done that, and you see greatness in front of you, I just had to have him on the show. So if you want to learn how to up your game and sound better than 99% or even 100% of your competitors, hang in there, folks. Let's see here. I hope you got a copy of your automation ebook. We give it away free for people that listen to the show. It's screwthecommute.com/automate free. Just one of the tips in this book, folks, has saved me 7.5 million keystrokes. We actually estimated it a couple years ago. And it'll help you work really fast and take care of more customers and grab business from competitors or who too damn slow to get back to people. So grab that at screwthecommute.com/automate free. And while you're over there, grab a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. And we've got video training. You know, a lot of people give you an app and then you have to figure it out on your own. Well, we have video training and screen captures so you can take us with you on the road on your cell phone and tablet. All right, I know everybody is, or not everybody, but most people are really hurting, and this pandemic has got them going crazy. There's school one day, there's no school. Yeah, send your kids. No, don't send them. They'll catch on fire if they come to, just all this craziness going on. Well, for me and my students, it's not that way. We've learned how to sell from home legitimately. I've been doing it since the commercial internet started in 1994, so almost 27 years straight. And my students are not freaking out because we're able to sell our information products around the world. So I formalized this training in the only licensed dedicated internet marketing school in the country, probably the world. It's imtcva.org. I had to go through 3 years of hell trying to get the license and dealing with all the red tape and everything, but it's highly in-demand skills. What I hate is the kids going to a 4-year college and then all they learn is how to protest, and then they get their MBA and they're competing for jobs at Starbucks. Well, that doesn't happen when I'm around because the skills that we teach are the same skills I've been living for 26 years, and every business on earth needs them, and they're clueless. So we got people making money before a couple months into the school. So check it out at imtcva.org. And a little later, I'll tell you how, if you're in my mentor program, you can get a scholarship to the school. All right, let's bring on the main event. Bobby Owsinski is a music producer and mixer, blogger, podcaster, and author. And I'm talking author. And I don't know, he might be a little confused because his bio says 24 books, but his website, he said 26 more books. So I think he lost track kind of like I did a while back. He gets so many of them. But his books have been the staple for many years in recording courses in universities around the world. Bobby, are you ready to screw
You bet,
the
Tom.
commute?
Yeah, Tom.
Oh, man. So great to meet you. I mean, I'm just thrilled to death that I sat through that hour and 50 minutes. And you could have it seemed to me, you could have gone on for 150 hours, as much as you know. But thanks so much for coming on.
I'm glad you sat through an hour and 50 minutes because I probably wouldn't.
Well, yeah, you've heard the stories before, and you kind of left us hanging, saying, "Oh, I could talk about Frank Zappa for another day," and then you didn't tell us anything. So maybe you can give us a Frank Zappa story later. But tell people what you've been doing all your life. It was so inspirational that you started with nothing and started as a young man and just fought your way to the top.
Well, the condensed version is I started as a musician, but I started in a little Pottsville, Pennsylvania, which is, not many people there, 10,000, something like that. And when I started, the chances of breaking out and going anywhere were, pretty much next to zero. But that being said, I stuck to it and was a professional musician, a touring musician for the first part of my life. And then,
Tell them the ages, though. You started at 13 years old or something, right?
yeah, I was playing in bars way before I should have. This is back in the days when there was a lot of them. So I was
Yeah.
playing 4 nights a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when I was in high school. But and then the same thing happened in college. I was touring a lot of times, and I paid people to take tests for me and things like that shouldn't have happened. But then what happened was, so I was in the studio, I was touring, and we were on a tour bus, and the bass player came on one day and said, "I just got a job writing for the music paper." The music paper is, or was, a weekly music newspaper that came out in the New York City area, and it was the Bible. But for some reason, I thought to myself, if he could do that, so can I. So I started to put feelers out, and the next thing you know, I was writing for one magazine, and then two, and then, a dozen. And
Now, were you really writing or paying somebody else to write for you like you did in college?
No, I was doing it. I just found my first article the other day, and I have to say it was pretty horrible. I look back. Thank God for editors. But it eventually led into another career of writing books. And the first one was the Mixing Engineer's Handbook, which is still the one that's in all the colleges. I wrote it because I wasn't very good at mixing. I was good as a recording engineer. I wasn't good as a mixer, but I happened to know all the best people in the world. So I went to them and I asked them, "What do you do? How do you do it?" And they told me. So I had all these interviews and I realized, this is gold. This is really good stuff. So that became part of the formula of my books, where about a third of them have just the interviews. And it's become something that, again, there are people that know much more than I do. I'm relying on them, and they have lots of good stories too. So I try to include that in all my books. And that became yet another career, and then kind of transitioned into a career of doing courses online. And that's kind of where we're at today.
Yeah, but you've played with some of the big boys. I was looking at your bio: the Who, Iron Maiden, the Ramones, Chicago, and you didn't even put all of them in there.
No,
So,
I didn't play with them. I worked with
no,
them.
but I meant played in their arena. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Besides the massive knowledge that we're going to, hopefully you'll give some tips to us people trying to do this stuff at home. One of the things that really hit me was your persistence and consistency, and you just kept scratching and crawling. And in fact, one story I kind of dug up was you kind of said your first studio job was a disaster, and they replaced you on the final album, right?
Yeah, this was the first album that I did with my band back from Pottsville. And it was, in the New York City area. We did it in the big New York studio. And I was shocked when the final product came out because I wasn't on it very much. I was replaced. But
A
what,
lot of people, that would have crushed them right there.
yeah, well, it didn't help me too much, I have to say. But I knew kind of when it was going down that, oh, wait a second, this is a lot harder than I ever thought it was. It's a different state of mind. It's a different state of playing. Everything is different on this level. So it was a surprise. It probably shouldn't have been. But that gave me the impetus to go to Berklee College of Music. And from there, it also kind of started me in my teaching direction, because about a year in as a student, they asked me to be a teacher as well. And this is on the recording side, because I had a degree in electronics and I had a fair amount of studio experience. So for a little bit, I was a student and a teacher, which I have to say does not work. So I went through a semester or two of that, and then finally just became a teacher there for a little bit.
Was that the place that you were in the lounge and they said this is for losers and something like that?
No, well, sort of. I was in the teacher's lounge, and somebody came in and very loudly explained to everybody, "Oh, this is a place for losers or has-beens." And I thought, oh, you know what? I don't want to be either of those. So I gave my notice very shortly thereafter. I was gone by the end of that semester.
Oh my goodness. Boy, you've certainly been around, but I remember you talking about you were sleeping on, you had $600 to your name. You blew off one place and you went to the big city and slept on a couch somewhere, right?
Yeah, for the first couple months, I didn't know anybody in California.
Now you know everybody just about, I think.
Well, I know a lot more than I did then. So one of my students from Berklee said, "You know what? I have a friend that lives out there in Santa Monica. Look him up, and you can stay with him for a while." And I was really reluctant to do that, but he made all the arrangements for me. He said, "Look, John is waiting for you, so go and do it." And I did. I met a lot of really good people that are still my friends, dear friends till this day. And it gave me, I got my feet wet. And really from there, it's the same thing in any business. You know, you start out with a group of people, and their success is your success and vice versa. So we all kind of rose through the ranks at the same time. And the ones that stuck it out are the ones that have made a reasonable living today. Not everybody did, though. And, you know, I can understand why. Life gets in the way sometimes.
Well, you learned a hard lesson that I just love. It was something about you learned to just take every job you could, because a buddy of yours took one for $50, and then the Australians gave him business forever, something like that.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's two ways to look at it. Only work on what you want and what you know. And then the other way is, you know, fake it until you make it and take every job that comes. I think the fake it till you make it is better. I didn't quite do that, to be honest with you, but you're referring to someone I had on my podcast that someone had called him and said, "I need a voiceover and I only have $50. And he said, "Well, I'm not doing anything today, so come on over." And it turned out that it opened up a huge sector of business for him, because he recorded every celebrity that was in the United States that was Australian, and for ABC over there. So it became a huge source of business for him. And a lot of people just blow it off and say, you know, it's not enough money or whatever. But it just goes to show you that you never know.
Yeah, and I see a lot of that in my professional speaking world where, you know, I go to these events and I'm usually the headliner, but a lot of these other speakers just blow in with their entourage like they're too good for everybody. And, oh, I've got to leave right away, buy my stuff because I got to catch a plane. And then I take all of the money home because I just, you know, I was so impressed with how humble and down to earth you are with everything you've been and done. And people like that. They're sick of the people that are so aloof and think they're better than everybody else. That's for sure. But
well, thank you, Tom. But I have to say, it's, you know, a lifetime of hard knocks and humiliations.
Yeah.
They kind of do that to you.
Yeah, that some of it. That's what makes people great. But unfortunately, because of you, this is going to be my last podcast ever, because I read an article in Forbes on predictions for 2021 by some learned guy that I'm talking to that said podcasting is dying. That was you.
Yeah, maybe I didn't explain that clearly. Right now, everybody and their brother is a podcaster.
Right. On their cell phone with Anchor.fm and no decent sound or anything.
Yeah, and or a lot of celebrities or near celebrities that think that, well, maybe I'll do this too. Oh, it's easy, but it's not, as you well know. It takes time, it takes effort, and you have to really keep at it. So I predict that in the next year or so, we're going to see a lot of those. I don't know how I should describe them. A lot of those that came in late are going to fall by the wayside because, again, it's not as lucrative and it's not as easy. Excuse me, as easy as everybody thinks.
Yeah, and the difference with me and the people I teach about it is that when people get into it, they think, I want to get a sponsor. Well, I don't know if you know the numbers or not, but a sponsor for just a plain old podcast pays between $12 and $18 per 1,000 downloads. It's really hard to get 1,000 downloads, first of all, and then per episode, and then 12 to 18 bucks. So what I teach people is be your own sponsor. So I have a product range that's, from 20 bucks till in the many thousands for my school and my mentor program and stuff. So that's really the way to make it lucrative without being a superstar. And so, but you in the article, you said, yeah, maybe 1% of the people will listen to me and do it that way.
I'm the same way. I don't have a sponsor. I've been offered many times, but I did this, the same thing for my blogs. There was always a reason behind it, and it was for personal branding.
Mm-hmm.
I already had a fairly high visibility in the industry, but I wanted to cement that. So first it was the blogs and then it was the podcast. And now it's kind of flipped around. At one point in time, I'd go to a trade show and people would say, hey, I read your blog. And now it's, hey, I listen to your podcast. So that's kind of nice. But again, I've stayed away and instead promote my own products. And I do it lightly too. For me, it's kind of, again, a branding thing.
And one of the reasons I got into it is because the listenership has been increasing because the cars now, you can just talk into your dashboard and it'll start playing podcasts. And then also the Alexa and Google devices and in-home devices, you can just say, hey, play Screw That Commute podcast, and boo, I just start coming out of the speakers. So there's potential for listenership, but you got to do it right, or it's a lot of work. There's equipment laying all over the place. Bobby, you, I think, invented the real New York City compression trick, right?
No, I documented it. I didn't
Right, the name of it. Right, the name of it. Well, I don't want to brag or anything, Bobby, but I invented the real Virginia Beach compression trick.
What is that?
That is, you get on the Guitar Center before they go bankrupt, and you get one of the kids there to come and set everything up. And I did that 2.5 years ago. I've never touched one of the dials on the mixing board since then. So that's the trick.
You sound pretty good, so don't do it.
But I'm not going to touch anything. I don't let anybody near the place.
Yeah. So take pictures just in case.
Yeah. Oh, I have. Yeah. So a lot of the people, Bobby, in my crowd were professional speakers, and all the speeches dried up, and now they're flailing around at home and sounding like crap. They're used to being on stage with a sound man and 1,000 people in the audience, and now they're sitting in front of a Zoom screen, cross-eyed with backlighting and noise all over the place. And so what kind of that whole speech, and by the way, I'll put the link to that in the show notes, or anything you'd like me to put in the show notes. But what are some tips that they can do to improve, and it won't take much to improve from what they're doing now, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I would say the primary thing is a good environment. That's the first thing. That means quiet. That means not in your kitchen or bathroom, because there's a lot of reflections going on. It sounds terrible.
And refrigerators and stuff.
Yeah. If anything, a nice closet, if you can't think of anything else, closet is usually quiet and there's no reflections, and it will make you sound really good. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be get a reasonable microphone because it doesn't cost so much anymore. And, just a USB microphone for, geez, $50. And you're way ahead of everybody else at that point because it will sound much better. And then there would be number 3, it's how to set that up and where to place it. Because I've seen people with USB microphones that place it so far away from them that they're getting mostly room anyway, and it kind of defeats the purpose.
Room noise, yeah.
Yeah, you have to get it close enough to you so it actually works for you. Now, the way I do it, I have a very professional setup, I have to say, but there's some easy tricks that you can think of that will give you the correct spacing, and you can use your hand. So an open hand. If I'm an open hand away, that would be, and at the most, it would be 2 open hands away. That would pretty much give you a reasonable direct sound without too much reflections. So just remember, an open hand. Put it up to your lips, where you put your thumb up to your lips, and where your little finger hits. There you go. That's a good distance. And at the most, 2 open hands.
All right, so I'm doing it right now, and my open hand is just touching my pop screen, which is about an inch away from the microphone head. So that's just a shade over a hand.
Now, if you want to go another way, in fact, you can use your fist. And right now, I'm one fist away from my microphone.
You're using a Shure SM7B, right?
7B, yes. One of the things that I don't think people understand as well is, placement of the microphone is a big deal. But it doesn't have to be directly on your mouth. If you look at all of those old Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin photos from the 50s and 60s when they're in the studio recording, the microphone is always up at their eyes and it's pointing down at their lips. And that way there's no pops.
Right.
So one way you could do it, and this is the way I have it now, I have the microphone at a 45-degree angle. So it's not in front of my face, and it still sounds pretty good, but yet it's picking everything up and there's no pops.
Right, because the air is not hitting directly on it, right, when you say P or something like that.
Yep.
Now, with that microphone, now that's a $400 microphone, right? So does the windscreen on that get away from using a pop screen, or does it have an internal pop screen, or what?
It does, but pop screens are overrated. And in many ways, they're not what you think they are. The reason why they were invented, it was to keep the spit away from the.
Okay.
I'm serious.
I know. I never thought of that, but it makes sense.
Well, especially on very sensitive condenser microphones, sometimes that can make, when you get a lot of moisture on the capsule, it will make it shut down. So that was a way to keep that from happening. Getting rid of pops is more positional than it is using a screen. The screen will help a little, but only a little. If it was going to help enough, what would happen is there wouldn't be enough sound coming out of the other side for you to hear it. So, just think of it like that.
See, folks, this is why you bring up people that have been there and done that. We all spend our $20-$30 on one of these things, and then we could throw it away or use it to flip pancakes, maybe. Another thing that you said that really surprised me is how little the floor had to do with fixing up your sound.
Well, it's very easy to go too far when it comes to dampening your acoustics. I'm not going to say soundproofing because they're two different things.
Right, that's a different thing.
Yeah, but what can happen is you can make your room too dead. One of the ways to get around that, and you'll find most professional studios are like this, is they'll have a parquet floor, they'll have a wooden floor, at least partially. And the reason why, it gives you spatial cues. We're used to hearing audio bounce off the floor. And when that's taken away, it can be a little disconcerting as well as just a little too dead. So I would never go. One thing I would tell everybody: look, if you're in a carpeted room, don't rip it up.
Yeah.
It should be okay, but you just don't need as much acoustic dampening as you might think. You need enough, but usually what there is what we call a reflection-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, especially if you're listening on speakers, wherever the speaker would reflect off a wall, that's where you need it to be soft. So you need some dampening material there. That includes both sides of you as well as on top. So it's something that we call a cloud. So, but if you do that, you find that you've instantly helped your sound. The other thing would be behind you. If you're really close to a back wall, then you have to treat it if it's not treated already. And usually we just have just a normal painted wall or something behind us, and there's going to be lots of reflections. So it's not so bad if you're 6 feet away, but if it's, right behind you, then you have to treat it. One way that's really simple and easy is to put a bookcase behind you. And you don't have to fill it up with books, just some books and then other items. And that way you get two acoustic properties going for you. One is absorption and the other is what we call diffusion. So the sound is actually bouncing off whatever's in your bookcase, and it's kind of splaying in all sorts of different directions rather than bouncing right back into the microphone. So that's a very simple way of helping your room out.
And it might be already set up somewhere for somebody. They just have to set their recording with that at their back.
Yeah.
And you said one of the best studios you were ever in had a massive bookcase, right?
Oh, yeah. It's right up the street from me, actually. And it must have been 20 feet high.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very large room and a very large bookcase. Now, a lot of the spaces didn't actually have books in them, as you would expect. There would be spaces for musical instruments, which work perfectly. A storage space, basically. But it's a very impressive thing to walk in and see that.
You talked about the for placement of some of this stuff, not the bookcase behind you, but you talked about the mirror trick. What's that?
Well, no, a lot of this stuff doesn't apply if you're doing everything just on headphones. We're talking about a listening environment where you're primarily concerned with what's coming back over a pair of monitor speakers.
Oh, okay. So if you're using headsets, that wipes out a lot of those problems.
Yeah, it doesn't much matter. What you're trying to do is just make the room quiet enough that you don't have any of those reflections. Like, for instance, you sound really good. You don't have any reflections.
I have like a fireplace behind me and mantle with just stuff all over, random stuff all over it.
Yeah,
it's pictures.
I mean, there's something there. I can hear it. It's a very slight reflection, but it's not loud. It's not bad at all. And I can only hear it because I know what to listen for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I knew that you would be able to pick up the finest nuances of all. But you sound like the best ever in 380 episodes I've ever had of coming through, even through Zoom and all that stuff. So is there anything specific you're doing besides having a good microphone and a good recording environment? Are you processing at all?
It's a high-end signal path, I have to say. So we're going through a couple $1,000s worth of gear. And ironically, I'm just about to change it all out for something brand new and up the game even more, which probably I'll be the only one that could tell when it's all said done.
When you get to that last few percent, it costs more and it's harder to make those things. All I got here is, again, I don't touch anything, but I got a DBX compressor limiter noise gate and going into, before that, the mic's going into phantom power, into the DBX thing. It was only $150. then into a Focusrite 4i4. What do you call that thing that goes into the computer? The
Computer interface.
computer
Yes.
interface. Somewhere this mixing board is hooked into the in here, but again, I don't touch anything.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. But I wanted to up my microphone, and then when I finish off this sound booth, I want to really make nice audio books, make my books into audio. So I got to figure this stuff out.
Well, I have to say, having done a fair amount of voiceovers myself, and knowing a lot of professional voiceover artists that have their own facilities now, just about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I know is that when you're making a booth, usually the quieter it is, the more absorption, the better. And this is kind of just the opposite of what we're looking for in a playback environment. Playback environment, we don't want it 100% dead. Little reflection is okay.
You're talking about this podcast environment is called a playback environment?
Well, a playback environment would be you have monitor speakers and you're listening back to audio. You're mixing it. You're manipulating it. So that would be the playback environment. And the equivalent would be for someone that owns a high-end stereo, would be their playback environment. They want it to sound, reasonably dead. You don't want it to be too dead, but on the other hand, you don't want any reflections either, so you can hear the music better.
All right, so am I on the right path building this frame and this? I got a 4x5 frame I just built, and I'm waiting for these acoustic, what do you call them, packing, moving blankets coming in. They're like 9 pounds each to wrap this thing up with.
Well, that'll work. There's lots of different ways to do it because there's lots of materials that are available that work. What it is how well they work at certain frequencies. So you have acoustic foam. Everybody's seen the egg crate stuff. That doesn't really work the way you expect. It's good at high frequencies, but not at low frequencies. So that's critical in some cases. In other cases, it's not. So if you're doing voiceovers, for instance, or you're doing audiobooks, that may not be as critical. Packing blankets or acoustic blankets will probably give you, let's say, a wider bandwidth of what it's going to attenuate. So, yeah, that should work okay. Again, there's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I heard you say a couple of times, even the best of the best people experiment. You just have to try something and see what happens, right?
Yeah, I'm not a studio designer. I know how to make home studios work. I've done it a lot, mostly for myself, but for other people too. But that being said, I know a lot of the best designers. And the technology is so far advanced now that they can pretty much hear what a room will sound like before it's even built.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
Wow.
That being said, it still requires some experimentation when it's finally built because there are things that you can't foresee that happen. And for instance, the material is changed. Maybe the way it's installed is changed slightly, or you have what normally happens is there's a construction person that isn't used to working in a certain way. The studios are required, for instance, and they install something improperly. So that means that you still have to fine tune things. It can take a while.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, for me, I'm a constant learner, so I'm getting a kick out of, learning all these things. And I mean, I had this microphone for 300 episodes that had these switches on it. And I never knew what they were for. Finally, one was a high pass filter, and the other one was, I think it was like a minus 20 dB control or something.
Yeah, well, I can tell you what those are, just in case anybody else has the same problem. When it says minus 10 or minus 20 dB, what that's for is really loud sources. So, for instance, if you're screaming into the microphone, then you might want to use that so it doesn't overload anything downstream. It doesn't overload your mixer or your computer interface or anything like that. That's what that's for. It's just to knock the level down if something's really loud. Now, if you're podcasting, that doesn't apply. So
Okay, so leave it off.
yeah. The high pass filter is useful though. And what that will do is it will cut out all the low frequencies. So it usually says what the frequency is, the cutoff frequency. It might be 60 hertz, it might be 80, it might be 120. But it's useful because it might cut things out like truck traffic that you might not be aware of, and yet it's kind of muddying up the audio. It might cut things out that, again, low frequency things that you're just not even aware of, or it happens so often that you don't think about. And that will clean up your audio. So that's useful, and it won't change the sound of your voice.
Because it's too low, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying that would be a good thing to leave on in a home environment.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back those 300 episodes. Start over. Oh, man.
We can do that after the fact, Tom. So
What, DAW, right? Digital. What is it? What's it stand for?
Digital Audio Workstation.
Digital Audio Workstation. I use Adobe Audition. Only like 1/1,000,000th of what it can do is what I can do. Did you ever, in your path, ever run across a guy named Mike Stewart?
Maybe. There's a lot of Mike Stewarts.
Okay. So he has a gold record for Pac-Man Fever.
Oh, okay.
And he's a friend of mine. He's got me started in this like 20 years ago editing, and he's an old Georgia boy. And he says, Tom, if you want to be an editor, first thing you got to do is record something. he says, then you cut out what's bad and what's left is good. That was his whole thing. I said, well, that's simplifying it for me.
Yeah, it can't get much simpler, but it's the perfect explanation.
Exactly. So what if your training and books would be good for my crowd, people that are working at home, want to improve their audio so that they sound better than their competitors? What kind of things do you have that might? I know you help a lot of professionals out, but none of us are that level.
Yeah, I don't know that I actually have anything, to be honest with you.
What's that one book that you have about the studio builders? Is that too advanced?
It could be helpful, yes. It's a Studio Builder's Handbook. Again, it's looking at a lot of different concepts, but it is taking you from nothing, from nuts and bolts.
Which is where we are.
Yeah. So it could be very helpful. But most of what I teach is at a higher level, to be honest with you.
Right.
It's slightly beyond, it's at the neophyte audio level for musicians, for instance. Anybody that wants to be a producer, who already knows a good bit of this, but wants to refine their knowledge. So that's kind of the niche I'm in.
I did see you doing some just nuts and bolts stuff with how to make sound panels and stuff. What were some of the materials that you were saying that go into the sound panels? And do you have that as training that people can buy, or is that just like a YouTube thing?
It's a YouTube thing, but it's also part of the Studio Builder's Handbook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's multiple ways to do this, but Rockwell is one of the easiest ways. And the reason why Rockwell is good is because, unlike fiberglass, compressed fiberglass, which is what was used forever in all sorts of studios, and this was used as an absorption material, that's kind of toxic and it's not fun to work with.
Yeah, it's itchy, and the people are
you don't want to breathe that stuff in.
Right.
But none of that applies to Rockwell, which is actually a spun rock, and it's also cheaper, and the acoustic properties are slightly better. Now, it's not as easy to get. Well, actually, compressed fiberglass isn't that easy to get either. But now you can start to go to Lowe's and you can find it. It's made by a company called Roxul, Roxul. And usually it comes in 4x8 sheets. So you'll find that all of the panels that you'll make, the acoustic panels, are in that standard frame. So you'll make a frame for it. You can either sit on top of the frame or within a frame. All of that's in that book, The Studio Builder's
Oh,
Handbook.
beautiful, beautiful. And, we do have some of our professional speakers are musicians that use their music and then turn it, because I don't know the music business, but it's much easier to be a speaker and get work than a musician, I think, to get work, because there's just every company on earth, is having meetings all day long and stuff. So a lot of the musicians, we got a guy that's been to Carnegie Hall 3 times, but he makes most of his money speaking and then playing the guitar while he speaks.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd have some stuff for them. So anyway, how do they get a hold of your stuff? How do they find out where all these books are? Do you sell them yourself or Amazon or what?
No, they're all available on Amazon. Colleges wouldn't apply. I mean, there's 5 or 6 different distributors, but Amazon is the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just go to bobbyowsinski.com.
Yeah, let's spell that for them.
BOBBYOWSINSKI, all one word.com. And everything is there. Links to the podcast, links to the blogs, links to my Forbes blog, links to the books, excerpts from the books, all that stuff. Links to my courses. So that's a good place to start.
That's beautiful, beautiful. So we'll have all this in the show notes for everybody because, like I said, when you run into somebody like this that's been there and done that, it's time to open your ears and eyes and pay attention because, like I said, he's really been around. So thanks so much, Bobby, for agreeing to come on. I really appreciate you. You've been very inspiring to me, and I know everybody else. I'm going to make them watch that Nimbus thing too because that was just tremendous.
Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So everybody, check this out. This was episode 381. You'll probably want to listen to it again at screwthecommute.com/381. Bobby Owsinski. Wow. Best sounding interview I ever had, that's for sure, and most interesting. So thanks so much, Bobby. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode. See you later.